My parents started leaving me and my sisters home alone when I was 13 or 14. Of course, the rule was not to let anyone know we were alone, and not to let anyone in the house. One night, there was a knock at the door. I went to the door and tried to look out, but I couldn't see anything. We couldn't pretend we weren't there, because the lights and TV were on. I opened the front door a crack, thinking that the person would be behind the screen door, but that wasn't the case. There was a man, maybe early 30s, standing in the doorway. I shut the door quickly and told him to get behind the screen door. He obliged, and I cracked the door. Yes, I wasn't very smart. Then I latched the screen door. He told a story about his vehicle breaking down and his need to use a phone. I said I couldn't see a car, and he indicated it was further down the road. I asked why he walked past the two houses right next door to one with no car in the driveway, and he became agitated. Here's a general recollection of the conversation. He said, "Look, are you going to let me use a phone or not?" I answered nervously, "No, my dad is sleeping, and I can't let you go into his room to use the phone." Still agitated, he replied, "Okay, bring the phone out here and I'll use it." I insisted that I was not letting him into the house and that the phone wouldn't reach the door. I asked him to please leave and he walked away. I shut the door and locked it. While my sisters and I were talking about how scary that was, the side door handle jiggles. He knocks and says, "Will it reach this door?" At this point, I told him to go to the neighbor's house and use their phone. He started to yell, "I bet your dad's not there. Let me in. I want to talk to him." I said, "Fine, I'll go get him." I then went into my dad's room and got his shotgun. I came out, racked it, and said, "Here, meet my dad." The guy started cursing and calling me names, but he left, or at least that's what I thought. He had actually gone around to another door and tried that one. Our dog, who was outside at the time, began barking at him. He proceeded to do something that made the dog yelp and cry out. I screamed out that I was calling the police, and he finally left. Thankfully, my dog wasn't hurt badly. When I was 14, my family lived in a really small apartment that had 2 rooms. Sometimes I felt like someone was watching me even when I was home alone, like there was another presence I could not explain. One afternoon, I was doing some chores in my bedroom and accidentally kicked one of my slippers far under the bed. I couldn't get it since there's only about a 2-inch gap under the furniture. It's also quite heavy to push aside, and I couldn't find a stick thin and long enough to reach under. So, I don't know what got into me, but I started chanting something like, "Slipper, get out now," over and over again. Then I got this feeling of dread and got scared, so I went out of the room. Not a second later, I swear I heard my slipper sliding. I went cold and looked back, and the slipper is now a foot away from the bed. I ran inside to get it and got out of the apartment as fast as I can. This is my sister's story. We laugh about it now because it's crazy how our parents brushed off how serious this was in hindsight. She'd gotten home from high school and was all alone. Then some guys came and tapped at the gate. Where I live, you do occasionally get people knocking, and it will either be religious preachers, or people saying they're raising funds for a recovery program they're in, or people selling something, that sort of stuff. She couldn't be bothered, so she just ignored them as she sat in the living room. After a moment of silence, she hears a loud bang and the garage door rolling up. She runs to the garage and screams as she sees 2 guys inside. They had been scoping out houses looking for empty ones to rob. The guys luckily just grabbed the 2 bikes and booked it. My mom mostly complained about the stolen bikes when she got home, but hey, that's way better that they took those rusty old things than ransacked the whole house or done something to my sister. To this day, it's why I go to the door when people tap at the gate. I rather tell them no thank you or not right now and have them know the house isn't empty just in case it's someone scoping out homes. Please drop a like and subscribe for more scary stories. In fall 2016, I moved into half of a really old house. It was built in the 1880s, a stone's throw from the original campus of Indiana University, which is now a blighted part of the town. The owners basically turned it into a weird duplex. My friend had lived in it right before I moved in, and he claimed that it was haunted, but I didn't really believe him because he was a bit of an odd guy. Anyways, the layout of the house was weird. You walked in the door and were in a living room type space, and then you kept walking and there was a doorway to a bedroom, and past that was the kitchen. Besides the bathroom, the only other door was one that led to the shared basement. So my first night there was uneventful. I was a little uncomfortable because I hadn't lived by myself in a long time and was just feeling lonely and on edge. I stayed up late and then eventually fell asleep, but I woke up again around 3 in the morning. Cliché, I know. What woke me up was what sounded like a group of drummers were drumming on every flat surface of the living room. It went on for a while, and I was completely terrified. It was just a cacophony of sounds. After about 2 or 3 minutes, I finally gathered up the courage to get up and check on it. As soon as I passed the threshold to the living room, it just stopped. Nothing happened the rest of the night, but I didn't get much sleep. A couple of days later, a friend was visiting, and he was about to leave. We were standing by the front door next to my bookshelf, and I told him about how I was having trouble sleeping and the story from the first night. As I was saying this, a book threw itself off the bookshelf and onto the floor 5 feet away. It had to fly past the dresser that the shelf was perched and landed between the two of us. He just gave me a creeped out look and said he had to go. I don't blame him. Eventually, I asked the guy in the other half what was up, as he had lived there for 8 years. He told me that no one stayed longer than a year, and they all reported the same creepy stuff. For whatever reason, he said nothing ever happened on his side. Doesn't make sense, but there it is. When I was 10, my brother and I were home from school because we were sick. We had a craft room in the mostly unfinished basement, and we were down there playing with miniatures. Around noon, we heard very clearly the front door unlock, open, and close. Then, someone walks in shoes across the foyer tile to the kitchen and turns on the sink. They then turned off the sink and went up the stairs to the second floor. We could hear the person walk around from room to room, opening and closing doors as they went. I figured it was my stepdad and called my mum to let her know he had come home for lunch. My mum's tone turned serious, and she instructed us to stay in the craft room and hide there. She had just got off the phone with my stepdad, and he was in his office at work. She called him back and he came ripping home while we hid in the basement. Although we never heard the person come back down the stairs, we didn't find anyone in the house. We're sure of what we heard, and our stepdad arrived with the front door open. I was watching TV on the couch with my dog around noon or so. Suddenly, she perks up, the hair on her back stands on end, and she begins snarling at the corner of the room. This dog, who was a previous abuse victim and scared of her own shadow, hesitant to ever bark or attack, was in a position to lunge. Right at that moment, I hear clear, defined footsteps walk from my roommate's room across the hall, right in my line of vision. No one is there, but I'm looking directly at the source of the sound. The dog is on the defensive, but her tail is tucked between her legs at the same time. She's looking in the same direction as I am. Immediately following this, the room got really cold for a few seconds, and it took the dog a while to lay back down. I never had any other paranormal experiences in that house, nor really ever in my life. The suddenness of it really freaked me out. I had just moved into my first apartment. It was around 9 p.m. and I heard the doorknob moving like someone was putting a key in it and turning and knocking. At first, I got really excited that my then boyfriend was home, but then realized it was only 9 and he was due home from work around 11. So I looked out the kitchen window and didn't see his car or anyone's car I'd known parked outside. That's when I panicked. The doorknob kept moving for a few more seconds and then stopped. A few minutes later, they had some piece of metal they were sticking between the door and the frame trying to open it. I freaked out at that point and locked myself in the bathroom with a knife and called 911. They tried to pry the door open for about 3 minutes before they stopped. The police surveyed the area and found an elderly man roaming around with a knife and a crowbar. He used to live in that apartment, and he wanted his stuff back that he believes we stole when we moved in. I was told he was really delusional. I'm so thankful and glad I didn't answer the door once I realized it was no one I knew. To this day, my heart stops when someone knocks on my door.